Good morning, church. I think everybody is so invigorated with the really nice, cool weather that I see a whole crowd of people who have been visiting with each other because it just feels so refreshing and wonderful to be here together on this day. So we're going to start with a little bit of singing. So if you'd open your hymnals to page 43 or watch on the screen, Christ is our cornerstone, and we're only going to sing verses 1 and 4. And now, turn to 402, Christian, Let Your Burning Light. We'll sing verses 1 and 3. And now there's a wideness in God's mercy, verses 1 and 5 on page 145.
Welcome to worship at the McPherson Church of the Brethren. We are an open and affirming congregation that strives to be hospitable and attentive to all of creation. We do not always meet that goal, and we have our share of ups and downs. But in the midst of it all, we continue to listen to God's call on our individual lives and the life of this congregation. We continue to seek to follow Jesus, peacefully, simply, together. We are humbled you have chosen to worship with us. Welcome.
My name is Ann Stover, and I'm here to greet everybody who's here in the sanctuary with us and those who are online. It's good to see you all. This is a time when we share with each other. Are there any announcements?
Not an announcement as much as a confession. Last Sunday, I introduced you to John Pattison from the First Baptist Church. The problem is that was Jeremy Bowers from the Countryside Covenant. He had a good laugh with it as well. I texted him and apologized profusely and said, "This is the idiot who, before God and company, introduced you as the wrong person." He promised he would still have coffee with me to tell me about his adventures in Alaska, so he's not going to hold it against me. So it was Jeremy Bowers from Countryside that had joined us last week.
Other announcements? I might just say that on September 12th, the Outreach Committee is serving at Steps, a meal. The number of people who are participating in Steps at this point is about 120. So it's an amazing number. There were 30 graduates in the last class, and they're just getting ready to start another class and anticipate another 30. So the need is great, and I've put a sign-up list down on the windowsill in the foyer. Please sign up for one of the foods that we need on that day. It's September 12th. Let's worship together.
Please join me in responsively giving voice to our opening words. All life begins in God, who births the seed to fruit. Bestow your blessing on our lives, God. Let your love find root. Bring forth in us the Spirit's gifts, on patience, joy, and peace. Deliver us from numbing fear, and grant an increase of our faith. Grant us your grace as we seek the power your peace imparts. Unite us in mutual ministry, our minds, hands, and hearts. Let our varied gifts combine to bring glory to your name, proclaiming your love in word and deed. And through shared tears and laughter, grief and joy, enlarge our trust and care. Bind us in community, that together we might risk and dare. Be with us as we gather to worship, sing, pray, and then send us forth in power and faith to live the words we say. Please rise and join in singing Called as Partners in Christ's Service. Please be seated and invite the children forward at this time for the Children's Time with Barbara.
Which princess are you today? Just a princess? Cinderella? I like that. I like that. Hey. You had that one at your house? It's very pretty. Oh, this book? Good, because we're going to talk about it today, okay? Hey, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, 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 good. Okay. So I brought a book today, and right away, she tells me we have this book at our house. Thumbs? Do you have it at your house? Have you read it before?
I read it before.
Yeah, you read it? Okay, good, because I'm not going to read it today, okay? So, it is a story that usually we read at Christmas time or like in the winter time, right? Yeah, but I'm going to share it today, and you're going to have to help me with the story just in case I don't get it right. And I did bring a little cheat sheet with me just in case, okay? So it's about a story. It's about a boy named what? Do you remember his name? Nicky? And what did he want?
He needed something to warm up his hands, so that's why her grandma made the mittens.
You're right. He wanted a pair of mittens. But what? He wanted a certain kind of mitten. What did he want? He wanted mittens white as snow. And what did Grandma say?
They're white just like snow, and it might get lost.
They might get lost in the snow. She was so worried that if she spent all this time making these mittens, they would get lost in the snow. And Nikki said, not to worry, Grandma, I'm not going to lose them, right? Famous last words. And she says, as soon as you come home, first thing I'm going to check is to make sure you are
Wearing mittens.
okay, and then to see if you have your mittens. So Nikki heads out. What happens to the mitten?
He lost it.
He loses it right in the snow. And an animal comes and gets in the mitten. Do you remember the first animal?
Yeah. It's
Well,
a mole.
It's a mole. Good job. Yep, right there. It's a mole. And so he's thinking, boy, this is nice and warm. And then who comes to get in the mitten?
The mouse.
Not yet.
The hedgehog.
The rabbit.
Oh.
And the rabbit gets in there. Well, he's got big feet, you know, so he has to squirm around a little bit. So the rabbit's in the mitten. So we got the mole and we got the rabbit. That's a lot in that mitten.
I thought it was supposed to be the mole.
The bear's almost the last one. So who comes after?
The hedgehog.
The hedgehog comes. And what does the hedgehog have?
Pointy.
Yeah, pricklies, doesn't he? Okay? But did the other animals say, no, you got to stay. We don't want you in here. Did they let him come in?
No, they let him in.
They let him in. Okay? So then let me check here. Oh, then we have the owl. And what does the owl have?
Claws.
Talons, yeah. So did they say, you can't come in? No.
No, they can't come in.
Even though that owl had those talons, they said, come on in. Let me check. Then we have the badger. Badgers can be really mean. Did they let the badger come in?
Yeah.
They did.
It's
Wow, that mitten must be getting
big.
bigger for all those animals. And then you're right, we have the fox.
Fox.
And the fox have sharp teeth. But did they say, no, you can't come in?
They did it back in.
They made room for that fox. And then what came in?
A bear.
A bear into his mitten. That mitten must have been huge because I saw a bear this summer and they are big. So we have the bear now in that mitten. And what comes in?
A mouse.
A mouse. The mouse comes in. Was there room for the mouse?
Yes. And then
So what happened?
the mouse bit on the nose and the bear sneezed.
And the bear sneezed, and what happened to all the animals?
They went
Yeah.
flying out.
They did. They went flying out. So sometimes when I read this story, I think, so what would have happened if the bear hadn't sneezed?
Because mouse.
They would have stayed in there. Do you think they would have invited more into the mitten?
Yeah.
Maybe so. Maybe so. I don't know. Maybe it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I have no idea. No idea.
Like a bigger balloon.
Yeah, like a big balloon. They just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So
Wait,
this story kind of reminded me. Yeah,
Wait, what about the animals let people in there?
maybe Nikki would have come back and gotten into the mitten too. I don't know. Good question. Good question. So, but this kind of story kind of made me think about. This story made me think about God's world and how in God's world we have room for everybody. Okay? We need to make sure we make room for everybody, even if they're different than us, even if they live in a different country. God's world is huge. There's always room for people in God's world, okay? But we need to make sure that everybody is fed, everybody feels safe, everybody feels like people are treating them fairly, and the biggest one of all is that everybody is loved. And if we help, then yes, God's world is like a mitten. And it just keeps stretching and stretching and stretching, and it will never, ever break.
And
Okay?
did you know? Maybe the animals will let clothes in.
I don't know. That would be silly, wouldn't
Or
it?
maybe ghosters.
Okay. All right, so to help you remember, I have a coloring page for you. What do you think it is?
A mitten.
The mitten. So grab your page.
Wait, we can do the white mitten.
You know what? You can do a white mitten, or you can make the mitten look like our earth. That would be kind of cool. Yeah.
Oh my, that's a big mitten.
That is a big mitten.
Yeah, it is a big mitten.
All right, guys, this week, as you're at school, I want you to think about God's world and make sure everybody in your school is included in God's world, okay? And I will see you guys next week. Have a good week.
Thank you for your continued financial donations. You may give online at maccobbrethren.org. That's maccobb@macbrethren.org. If you are worshiping with us in person, you may place your gift in the offering box at the back of the sanctuary. Just slip it through the slot in the top of the box. Or you may mail your gift to the church office at 200 North Carey Street, McPherson, Kansas 67460. Or hand deliver your check to the church office. Just push it through the mail slot at the Education Building. If you join our worship from afar, please donate to local needs in your area. Thank you for sharing.
Make my love like a river, I said, thinking it would be, covering the in-between and joining you to me. See, I know that you would wander, and I thought you could be free. I guess I thought that this is what you wanted. But I won't love like this again, because it wears the heart too thin. So make my love like a circle, no beginning and no end. Give me love like a circle, and I'll be happy then. Make my love like an ocean, I said, deep as deep can be. My might of heart unfolding you, your heart defining me. Is there anything as awesome as the fury of the sea? The violence was beauty for a moment, but I won't love like this again. It changes with the southern wind. So make my love like a circle, ground on which I can depend. Give me love like a circle, and I'll be happy then. I seem to live in straight lines. My life is made of straight lines, always before or behind. I can't escape the straight line. So make my love like a circle, Oh, and teach me how to bend. Give me love like a circle, and I'll be happy then.
Thanks, JD. Thank you, Barbara. Here is Psalm 15 as David asks a question and receives an answer. God, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? The one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their very heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor, casts no slur on others, who despises a vile person but honors those who stand in awe of God, who keeps an oath even when it hurts and does not change their mind, who lends money to the poor without interest, who does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken.
Good morning. You know, I have Scott Holland, and I've mentioned Scott before in my head right now, who always reminded me in my seminary classes that if I was to preach, I had to be open to preaching with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. He was quoting Karl Barth. By the way, Holland is not responsible for that quote, but he reminded us that as preachers, as ones who speak the truth in love or whatever, we need to make sure that what we say reflects the times that we're living in. I share that because the sermon that I felt I was called to craft is trash. And I mean that sincerely because it's not where we are as a community right now. It's not where the Spirit has taken us. It's not where Barb's children's story guided us. It's not where JD's amazing, beautiful art and voice invited us. And so, bear with me as I'm calling an audible, as this is going to be completely stream of conscious, perhaps. I'm not sure, but God is really saying the sermon that was crafted is not fit for what we're doing. Instead, I want to talk about beauty and art. How many of you have ever been to a coffee shop? Raise your hand. It's okay. Interactive. Help me out here. Right? I spent hours on this, and now I'm just throwing it away. You've been to a coffee shop. What's your favorite? Name it loud. Be boisterous. What's your favorite drink of choice when you go to a coffee shop? We're so brethren. For me, when I'm feeling really like I want to spoil myself, I'll get a latte. And I like it just with espresso and steamed milk. And there's something about that is in itself art coming to life. You know you have a good latte when the artwork of the steamed milk is visible at the top. And you can see this amazing, some put a heart, some put other things. That's when you know the barista has done their job. They've created a masterpiece to put in your hand and to marvel at. When I think about life together, when I think about meeting in God's tent, it should be beautiful. It should be art. It should be drama unfolding. It should be something that allows us to sit and just be. It also means we leave transformed as something new, newly created in the image of God, our hearts, our bodies, our souls, filled with something uniquely divine. And God's tent must be diverse. The image of the mitten is absolutely profoundly spot on. It must continue to grow as people come and feel safe in this holy space. And when I imagine this, when I think about the diversity and the power of God's tent and folks gathering together to worship the divine, believe it or not, I think of a character in history that many of us probably feel we're adversarial to who we are as brethren. Malcolm X. I know, before I get thrown out of the brethren peace stance sort of lectern here, hear me out. Malcolm X, right? For those that knew of X when he was in the middle of his movement and his work, you heard often the ballot or the bullet. By any means necessary. Black separatist, if you're not going to give us justice, we want our own. And X pushed and pushed and pushed. There are stories of people with light skin asking if they can join the movement, and Malcolm X would say, no, you've got nothing to offer us. That was until he went under God's tent. When he did his Hajj, his pilgrimage to Mecca, something divine happened within him. In that tent, literally, sitting around fires, gathering with people were not folks who looked like he did. Instead, white European friends sat beside him. And in that moment, in that diverse, holy moment, Malcolm X's eyes were opened, and he realized that God's kingdom is bigger than race. X returned from his pilgrimage transformed, renewed, invigorated about inclusion, assimilation, a society where we stand side by side. He didn't bend with his critique of the government. That remained until the day he crossed the river. But he recognized that working hand in hand with people from different races and backgrounds was the only way forward. In God's tent, we are met by the divine. And the more diverse and open we are, the more powerful the experience can be. And we can leave transformed, renewed, ready to go. But folks, we know this, don't we? I mean, we're the brethren. We're the church of the brethren. We anchor ourselves in social justice and service and doing good, and we pat ourselves humbly on our backs about all the great things we're doing behind the scenes, and that's wonderful. That's amazing. It's godly. But is that the totality of worship? Sure, David, who wrote Psalm 15, talks about these ethical foundations that we must have as a people of faith. We must not lie, we must feed people, we must do A, B, C, and D, and all of this is all part of gathering under God's tent. But I fear that for many of us, that's what becomes our worship. I fear for many of us, that becomes not only the foundation of who we are, but everything about who we are. It identifies us as we are. It is the social justice. It is the work. It is the labor. It is the time we spend putting hammer to nail, building houses. But friends, that's not what it means to gather under God's tent completely. It is not what it means to find ourselves sitting in holy spaces completely. It is more than that. It has to be. Because David didn't just write Psalm 15, which is a powerful psalm of justice and ethical foundations. He also wrote powerful poems and liturgies and songs about the reverence and the awe of God. He wrote many liturgies that within Jewish context and Jewish worship still used today as a call and response. So David's Psalm 15 isn't the totality of worship. I believe he's telling us it is the precursor to worship. It is prerequisite to worship. It is what is necessary for us to come and sit in reverence and in awe and to marvel at the beauty that is worship. We have to have the ethical foundations, absolutely, but that is so that we can come free of the chains of the world to be present, fully present for one another and before God. Living a holy life allows us to enter God's space, ready to be moved and transformed and renewed. In our past, within the Church of the Brethren, and there are elements of it that I don't fully endorse, like the band, but there are pieces of it in our story that absolutely speak to their understanding of this. The elders would visit members, right? And why would they meet the members and visit with the members? They would ask them a question. Is there anyone that you have issue with? Are you right? And this is before communion. I get that. Before love feast, I understand that. But these questions were relevant not just on those holy days, but every holy day. The elders understood that if we have things holding us back, we cannot be fully present to worship, to fully worship our God. And so those become moments to tell the truth to one another, to be vulnerable for one another, to care for one another, so that when we do gather, we can do so free, liberated, open, and vulnerable. We can break bread with people who are different and alike. We can share in the cup with those we agree and even disagree. But we have to leave the junk behind us so that we can be available with those present. And we do so with hearts full of love, as God has loved us. Love of God, love of ourselves, and love of one another, and anchored in love. Again, for God, for self, for our friends in the pews, we can partake of Holy Communion, and no bread or cup need even be present. We can embrace the holy chaos that is worship. We can become something greater together. I've got another question. Again, this is a chance for you to engage. But what does it mean to worship? What is worship? We understand what it takes to be present for one another. We understand what we need to do to be here. But what does worship mean to you? What does it look like to feel like to experience God through worship? I imagine if we sent a poll out all across the internet and in every pew in the Church of the Brethren, we might hear millions of different answers. And I mean that because whether we want to admit the Church of the Brethren in the United States may be diminishing, but in Nigeria and other areas, it is growing. It is exploding in growth. The Spirit is moving. I imagine we would get a lot of answers. We may hear that, well, some really enjoy the organ. That's what makes them feel close to God, and some enjoy guitars. Some, like myself, may say silence is where we meet God. All of those are good. But those reflect our personal, emotional connections to the divine. They are amazing as they speak to how God speaks to us. But outside of the personal choice of worship, isn't there something larger that are absolutely elemental for it to be worship? I think so. First and foremost, we have to be together. Let me say that again. We have to come together. We have to be in community. We have to do the hard stuff of life together. We have to roam the dusty roads with those we can speak truth to in love, but also with those who need to speak it to us. We do so because love binds us. Love binds us. And those divine bonds will not be broken. And they give us a promise of a new day, a new hope, and we do so hand in hand. First element of worship is we can never do so isolated, alone, abandoned. But hand in hand, we enter God's tent, and hand in hand, we exit into the world, godlier lives around us. And the second piece that I believe is that worship is liturgy. It's words and actions, songs and silence. It's movement and sitting. It is offering ourselves to God and God alone. It is creating and marveling at art, whether it's music, poems, or canvas. It is building homes and blessing those homes. It is laughing. Laughter is holy. It is weeping together. It is creating a space like a mitten that all can gather into, and it grows as love grows. When we enter God's tent, God remains the focus of our hearts, our minds, and our souls. And when God remains the focus, when God takes center stage, there's something powerful that happens. Like Malcolm X leaving his Hajj, when we are able to put our limited dislikes and likes aside, when we put our prejudices and hates aside, worship transforms us. Worship impacts us. Worship heals us. Worship equips and calls us. And then worship sends us. Just as Malcolm X returned from his Hajj, renewed, recreated, so too, friends, when we leave God's tent after holy worship, we go into the world made new. When we gather under God's tent, we are freed in that moment to dance, to sing, but we can also embrace silence. We give of our time, our talent, and our tithe, and we do so with glad hearts. And we link our hands and our stories with our friend in the pew next to us, enabling us, inviting us to break bread with folks we never imagined possible. So when we get it, when we allow worship to liberate us from the chains of the world, when we enter God's tent free from everything that binds us, we will experience a worship beyond our wildest dreams. But more than that, it will give us a glimpse of God, just an inkling of God, and how good our world can be. So, may we all have the courage to enter God's tent free of the chains of life that hold us back. May we have the warmth and the ability to invite others to join us in the mitten and recognize that in God's tent is also a refuge and a safe place. And may we exit the tent liberated, empowered, called to honor the prayer that Jesus gave us on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. Please rise for our sending song. Please be seated for the sending words and remain seated for the sending music. I think it's beautiful being human. There are times being human is a struggle, isn't it? We're emotional creatures, and sometimes those emotions can overwhelm us. But those are God-given gifts. And in a safe space in God's tent, we embrace the humanity of one another and all the layers that come with that. We feel safe to be vulnerable with one another. We trust that as we link our stories in our hands, that the person we grab the hand of next to us will carry us when we can't carry ourselves, and that we too will carry them when it is time. So may we have the courage and the faith to link our stories to one another in God's tent. Because as we exit this place, the world needs glimmers of hope and light. And isn't that what the church is supposed to be? A city on the hill, a light, a lamp on a lampstand. So may we be what we're called to be. Amen.